Hello and welcome to Take Your Time, a Persona 5 Strikers podcast where we play Persona 5 Strikers not in real time, but we take our time as we play it and continue the wonderful adventures of the Phantom Thieves. And boy, do we have some wonderful adventures to continue this week with some major events to talk about this week and a very special guest. But first, I'm joined, as always, by Tom Marks.
Hello.
Hello, Tom. Did I say my name yet?
I don't listen to you when you start the shows.
That's fair. Who does? Anyway, we're also joined this week by our very special friend of the show, Barrett Courtney. Barrett, hello.
I'm already a cop in real life, genius. God. I you know what? Thank you for having me back on Take Your Time. It's been a long time since I've had the time to talk about Persona 5 on Take Your Time. Last time I was here was for Royal, and so I've just been the entire time just listening along to the show for Strikers and just kind of getting your takes on it, which has been really exciting. And naturally, I requested for a certain segment in the game to come on and talk about, and that was this jail in particular, because I particularly love it. It's my favorite section in the game. And I'm excited to talk about that, and it's been really cool to just hear Dorno's thoughts playing it for the first time. It's been a real gut punch to my ego when y'all talk about boss fights or mini bosses like the jail keepers, and you're like, oh yeah, that was easy. And then I just kind of pause the show and I sit and I ponder if I'm actually good at video games or if I'm just like a big dumb idiot. Because let me tell you, I'm not. I like this game. Tom, you and I have had our back and forth on whether we enjoyed the original characters for Royal or Strikers more,
sure,
and things like that. I think my biggest thing with this game is I'm just bad at it. So it's like it was a big barrier of entry for me personally. Even though I don't think the combat system's bad. I want that to be clear. I thought it was really cool how they combined the two together into this more action-packed game. But even with that, I barreled through it as much as I could, whether I was under-leveled or whatever. I will never know why I was so bad at that game. Because I really enjoyed spending time with the Phantom Thieves again. I do still really enjoy the new characters, the original characters that are in this story. And thanks for having me on for this part.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. We have, I think I wouldn't feel too bad because I think if I hadn't played the first 6 hours of this game a year earlier and then came in with the mindset that it was going to be a hard game, it almost really helped me prepare that this is going to be hard. And I really forced myself to learn every inch of the mechanics. We've talked about this, but I think if you're not always taking advantage of kind of everything the game gives you, you can get stopped pretty easily.
Yeah, for full context, right? I haven't been playing along. I meant to start playing along, but this crazy thing called life happened where I have so many things going on at once. It is what we call a kind of funny review season. We're getting close to review season almost. We're also in the middle of launching a new studio in by the time this episode goes out in 4 days. So I have not been able to play along. So to prepare for this episode, I actually watched a YouTube walkthrough 100% no commentary of Persona 5 Strikers, and it was also a gut punch to my ego where we get to the boss fight in this section, and seeing every aspect of the combat that they used, I was like, why didn't I utilize all of these? Why was I dumb playing this game? And they beat the boss in 4 or 5 minutes, where I was like, I'm pretty sure this took me 5 tries, and each try took a really long time. So maybe if I ever return to Persona 5 Strikers on the Steam Deck, because at this point that'll probably be the only place that I play it, just because I like to play things handheld in bed. Maybe I'll understand it better the second time around eventually.
We will definitely be getting to that boss fight, because I do have some thoughts. It's actually funny you bring up difficulty, because that was one of the things I want to talk about with that fight. But we've got a bit of a ways to go before we get there. To start off with things, of course, as always, we'll begin by checking in on our pop quiz question from last week. Tom.
Yes. Well, this one is a super hard one from last week.
Uh-huh.
And I know, Barrett, you haven't been playing the game, so it might be even more difficult.
I know. I listened to this episode, the last week's episode yesterday, to also prepare and catch up. And man, this was when you asked this question after Dorno stole 10 questions from you approximately last week. I was like, man, this is a thinker. This is really a thinker.
So for both of you, what pairs well with curry?
Corn.
Coffee.
Corn.
It's coffee. It was. I appreciate.
I appreciate the corn callback.
Yeah, you know what showed up in Sophia's shop for me actually this episode after you complete a request to get more groceries, showing up in her shop. Wow, grilled corn.
Hell yeah!
Yes. So now you can buy it. But yes, awesome. The answer was coffee. That was the silly little passcode they used to get into the safe house area.
I will say it's not just a callback for me. It is literally a weekly part of my life. I think every time I tweet now, one response is just corn.
Awesome.
It has become my
fantastic.
I feel bad about that. I'm sorry.
No, like I said, I think we joked very early in the run of Strikers that like I want someone 10 years from now to remind me corn. Just like tweet me at corn. And
and they'll do it too. They'll do it. Recently someone sent me a clip out back when Greg and I did the 10-year anniversary of Batman Arkham Asylum, and Kevin was giving me crap about a certain person on this show being my best man. And he was like, let's see who you're hanging out with in whatever it was, like 3 years. And I was like, yeah, it's still Dornbush. Dornbush is still like a really good friend.
It's really funny. Well, Tom, thank you for that pop quiz question. I'm excited to see what you come up with this week. Hopefully I don't steal them all. Go ahead.
Look, just as a tease for the end of the episode, I hope we don't steal this one because I'm really excited specifically to ask you, Jonathan.
Oh, okay. Well, we do have some comments as well from around the web. I also do want to say we have gotten a wonderful influx of emails actually in the last week or two. I don't have them for this episode just because I want to go through them. A lot of them are sort of like wider Persona stuff. Some things reference Persona 5 Royal like spoilers. So I just want to vet everything a little bit more thoroughly before I read them on the show. But thank you to everyone who's been writing in. If you want to write in via email, you can at dornology@gmail.com. But our first comment this week, just wanted to mention it, came from the Spotify question I put out, which since we finally got a look at our villains, what people think of their intro and how we feel about them so far. And GamerZack said something I think similar to what we were saying last week. The new characters introduced in P5 Strikers, specifically I think like on the hero side, are more fleshed out, making them more interesting to the story than the new characters were in P5R for GamerZack. The villains seem far less fleshed out, though, and meaningful. Which I know, Tom, that seems to be, at least on the hero side, how you felt. We haven't gotten too deep into the villain side.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we definitely talked about last week, right? The idea that because these villains are sort of introduced later or not as sort of teased throughout, they are a little bit less, it's harder to connect with them quite as much.
It's less organic than Persona 5 for sure.
And that's just a symptom
on
of
that
being...
front, we've gone back and forth and like talking in vagueness about like the characters between Strikers, specifically because the last time I was on here, Dornbush had not been introduced to those characters yet. Right. And I will agree with you on the hero side. Like I do like more what they do with the hero side, but the villain side of Royal is where, I wouldn't even say villain, but more of just like antagonist in a way, right? That character in and of itself is like probably my favorite Persona character throughout all the games. So, but sure. I will agree with you. Like the new team that you build in this one is really great, which we will talk about on this episode.
Yeah,
indeed. We also got a comment from the Blue Golden Hawk, which Tom has given to me because I have to try to pronounce Japanese.
Oh, you don't. You can skip the Japanese if you want.
Oh, I probably will because I don't want to be offensive. But this refers back to Tom discussing last week about the sort of incidental dialogue that happens on the side with someone being like, "You done goofed now," to the Phantom Thieves when talking about how they messed up.
Yeah.
The Blue Golden Hawk said in the Japanese version they say something which is dialect for something like, quote, "Phantom Thieves, what the hell have you guys done to us, or how could you?"
Yeah,
I can't speak
in the
nuances.
Osaka Kansai dialect. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I can't speak to the full nuances of this phrase, but also Kansai dialect is known for being a rougher, more direct way of speaking Japanese, which others in the country can feel sounds rude if they're from a different region. So yeah, in short, the English version is just awesome localization.
Yeah, and that was specifically me asking if the goofed up part of that was like actually in the
there,
translation, and it's not, which is totally fine, right? Yeah. Like it is I think a completely good part of localization to take something like this where like the fact that this specific dialect might come off in a certain way and basically be like, well, that's not going to translate in a direct sort of word for word thing, so like how do we make it like a little bit the spirit of that, right? Like
right.
I think that that's a cool way to sort of do that. And also we get an amazing moment where someone yells, "You done goofed up, Phantom Thieves," and
it just confirms, like you guys said last week, Zach Ryan is in the Persona universe. So
yeah,
exactly. You know, yeah, that is his character.
He just happened to be in Japan that day.
Yeah.
And the last comment that I wanted to read this week, that we got a lot of great ones on youtube.com/Dornology, where you can go to comment on the show. Amy wrote in, and for those who have been longtime listeners know that Amy often commented during the Persona 5 Royal days, but hasn't been commenting as much during Strikers, and for good reason. They mentioned this comment, and I wanted to read this because it's a wonderful story. Hi, Jonathan and Tom. I started a new job and haven't had time to play Strikers yet, so I've been saving up these episodes for when I finally get the chance. However, I couldn't resist when I got the notification for this episode on YouTube and needed to give it a listen. As always, it's been a pleasure to hear you both, and I can't wait to catch up soon. In the meantime, I just wanted to share a small thank you. Your Persona podcast motivated me to dive into the depths of the Persona fandom, and I ended up befriending the only other Persona fan in my area. We bonded over a love for a certain sweet, innocent pancake boy, a niche interest, and 9 months later started dating. I credit your podcast with fueling my Persona brain rot and setting me on the path to finding love.
Holy crap!
My girlfriend and I have been listening through the original P5R podcast with friends and look forward to catching up on the Strikers episode soon. Hope you're both well, Amy. Our show created love.
That is amazing.
It is
incredible.
Yeah. Amy, thank you so much for sharing that with us and with, the community and everything. Thank you. You've always been such a wonderful supporter of the show. So I'm glad that things seem to be going so well in your life. Thank you for leaving that message and that note for us. Wonderful to see. And we thank you for continuing to support and spread the love of Take Your Time as you have kind of from the beginning. So thank you so much. Speaking of spreading the love, we've been talking a lot these past few weeks about Persona 5 Royal coming to other platforms this month. So if you enjoy the show, let other Persona fans know if they're going to be jumping in for the first time. Also, just wanted to mention for those who are curious and maybe missed it, because I did until Tom shared it with me, but Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden, the new... not new, but the remasters of both, which P3 is new and P4 has been on Steam and Vita, of course. Right. But those two are coming to other platforms, Xbox, Nintendo, and PS4, and Steam, I believe as well, or Windows, are all coming January 19th of next year. The two of them are coming January 19th. Persona 5 Royal,
very
new
exciting.
Platforms, October 21st, and then those in just a couple months after, which I'm surprised. I thought those would be kind of like doled out a little bit later. But I'm cool with it.
They did say early next year was the implication. My gripe, I have a gripe with it really quick, is that this is the 25th anniversary that they've been celebrating with all these new Persona announcements, and they're like, we've got one more and that's it. And the one more thing was the dates for these games, which isn't inherently like terrible, but it's like a lot of people are expecting that Persona 6, like not even like full like reveal or anything, but just like, hey, we're working on it. And I thought that was an interesting choice to just save the dates for these two ports as the kind of last thing. If I was in charge of it and I knew that like that was really all we had and we didn't have Persona 6, like I would have saved the announcements of even just Persona 3 and Persona 4 coming to other things until now, and not for the Xbox thing. Like maybe just keep it's Persona 5 Royal for now, and then, save the Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden thing until, the concert that they had the other day. So I don't know. It was weird. It was weird to wake up to and be like, oh, okay. Yeah. That sounds cool. But also at the same time, I'm very excited that fans who might have gotten into the series for the first time because of Persona 5, like the three of us, get to experience these other great stories in this universe and fall in love with even more great casts of characters. And, just as a recommendation, Persona 4, if you want to be a part of Scoob and the gang, Persona 4 is going to be for you. If you want to have existential dread mixed in with teenage angst, play Persona 3.
No wonder Andrew Goldfarb loves Persona 3 so much. Patron saint of the show. But yeah, should be exciting to jump into those. I will say, yeah, I know the anniversary rollout. We came into it, I think, last year, Tom, being like, what are the big announcements we're going to be covering on the show as they happen?
Yeah.
And it's mostly been like toothpaste and a stage show in Japan that only people there can obviously see. So it hasn't been the most thrilling rollout, I think, as Barrett pointed to. People just kind of wanted even a tease. I think when they announced Persona 5, it was literally just like one piece of concept art that was like a red background and some like black chairs and chains, I think it was. Even just something like that for like P6, I think would have drove everyone crazy.
Just give me the color palette. That's all I need right now. Just admit it that it's green because it's my favorite color and I would love that. Just give me something.
Well, maybe they'll do it while we're still making the show at some point in the future. But until then, we do at least have more Persona 5 Strikers to cover, and that's what we're going to be doing this week, because we have a very exciting jail to get into. Again, the game sort of upending the pacing and the structure that it created in the first few jails. I think to its benefit is upending them and making things a little bit more unexpected as we go through. And boy, are there some unexpected things that happen in this jail, all focused around Zenkichi and Akane and their wonderful family. And I don't need to worry about spoiling that because you've hopefully played by now. But yeah, we're going to be getting into it. It's essentially just August 23rd and August 24th, which is what I always enjoy about.
Yeah.
Barely. Yeah, which is what I always enjoy talking about this game, is it's a very short window of time every time. But a lot will happen. So yeah, we should get into it. Obviously, we left off last week with the Phantom Thieves getting a text from Akane, but not Akane, saying essentially we have Akane. Said Akane a lot. And come get her, or, you know, bad things are going to happen. That's basically what we knew we had to do. We went to go to a jail, or we get a sense of a jail. Then we get a message from the Phantom Thieves, weirdly. And Phantom Thieves happens to be the code to get into this jail. And then we get sucked in. And that was the cliffhanger we left off with, I believe.
Yep.
So, let's get into it. We get into this actual jail, and things are suspicious for us. Things change quite a bit from here. I'm making sure I get to my notes in here, and it's been a little bit, so forgive me if I bounce around a little bit. Tom, just stop me. But essentially...
Stop.
Go ahead.
No, you just
He
told
just
me
wanted
to
you to stop.
Yeah. Okay, you can keep going.
All right, cool. Thank you. Anyway, so we get into this jail. It's sort of a dark night. I think there's sort of a more ancient, like, Japanese buildings around us, like a more feudal sort of look to it.
It's as we learned from last week, it's like the entrance is at a shrine. So yeah, it's a very traditional shrine setting, which I just want to shout out of, like, it stands out so much because I feel like especially the first half of the game, you know, visually, I don't think a lot of the jails are super interesting. So the second you get into here, and it pops out in such a cool way that I think mixes the kind of style you expect Persona 5 to have with also something more traditional in like the culture of Japan, and it's just so freaking cool. It's the best jail.
It definitely stands out as also because, like you said, like the first three jails are like kind of Alice in Wonderland-ish city, kind of night-ish city, snow city, and then you get ugly facility hallways, and then there's this, and it really does stand out.
Yeah, and obviously it comes from, you know, devs in Japan, and they're able to tap into their knowledge and you know,
Sure.
obviously history with their own culture, and so I think it shows through that. Yeah, there's a certain care and a bespoke design to this level that I really like. But when we first get in, it's a little ominous. We're not sure really what's going on here. As we make a little bit of progress in, we realize that Akane is chained up and in trouble. Things are amiss. Oh no, it's a trap. It's totally a trap. Things go bad, and it turns out, of course, that Akane is actually the monarch, and the group, all of the group except for Futaba, get trapped in a large jail cell, which I guess the bars are too large for Mona's head, because I think Mona's body could fit through, probably.
Yeah, he's got a really big head, so I but even like when Ryuji is like up there, I was like, I feel like either Ryuji or Joker are slim enough to kind of just like go through sideways, but whatever. Also, I have a very important note here about like, Futaba obviously being the one to escape because she conveniently trips over nothing is what I have written down here. Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah. There's just a trip that happens.
Hey, listen, she's not as athletic as the rest of them. She's used
fair.
to being behind the computer. Okay.
But here's my thing, is that this is their... Jeez. Well, let's see. After Futaba's palace, right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4, 5 palaces, and then this is the 5th jail? So she's done this 9 times.
Yeah.
And we're still tripping over stuff. Futaba, come on.
Well, normally she's in her little spaceship,
Yeah.
Is that what's happening? I feel like in my head she's in that when they get into battle.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I assume, but I do also like to imagine that just out of frame all
she's
the
just
time.
flying around.
That's why you can't see her. Yeah, she's controlling she's like Lakitu in Super Mario 64. She controls the camera.
She's your camera the entire time. Wow, I like that lore. Lore.
I'm proud of that. Anyway, that's the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to leave it there. Futaba doesn't get captured. We realize Akane is the monarch here. Things seem to be amiss, and we kind of then get, as we were talking about last week, a lot of intercutting to help keep up the pacing here.
Yeah.
And so we end up over on Zenkichi's side of things, getting beat up yet again in the interrogation room. Just not going well for him. But luckily, Sai comes to his salvation, which I was really happy to see Sai. I know it was
were
teased. Well, I just thought it was
were you happy to see Sai, or were you happy to hear Sai?
No, you were Sai because it was from her perspective.
It did her.
This is like one of the funniest things to me, and I don't want to denigrate this scene because it's a cool scene because
very cool.
Zenkichi's getting beaten up and he's like still being a badass about it and like pushing back on these guys who are beating him up, basically being like, "Is that all you got?" Like very, stiff upper lip about it. And then Sai comes in and he has no idea who she is, but she's sort of super suave about the whole thing and saves the day. But like, it feels so transparently like they just didn't want to use Sai's character model in this game. Like, and they just like the whole scene or that whole part is from her perspective, which they've never done before. And then later when she's in the game, she just calls them like she's not in the scene. Well, I just wonder if they just didn't want to animate her model again or something.
I mean, you got to assume, who knows? I guess I don't know enough about the development to know what the differences in engine are and aren't. And what they were able to bring over / what they had to build from scratch.
It was her suit. They couldn't. It wouldn't transfer over. There was a deleted file at some point past when they were done making Royal and they didn't have her anymore. And they're like, we don't want to create her from scratch.
Where'd the Sai file go? Oh no, we missed it.
Oh no, we deleted it. Whoops. I do love this scene just because we're going to talk about it a couple times. Zenkichi is just adult Joker. And I love that she kind of comes into anytime that we reuse Sai in an interrogation kind of moment. I love that kind of like little bit of a callback where the first time we're introduced to her in an interrogation scene, she is set up almost as an antagonist, whereas here she's here to save the day, which I love that kind of little circular thing going on with her. And also, you know what? In this moment, rewatching this yesterday, I was like, I want Sai and Zenkichi to date. And that's all I really have to say about that. And I have no reasoning, but I think it'd be cute.
It's a good ship.
Zenkaichi could use the structure in his life. I think that would.
He really could.
Yeah. So anyway, again, cutting back and forth. We have Futaba back at the safe house, out of the jail, kind of regrouping, trying to figure out what to do, and Zenkichi meets up at the safe house with her, explains everything in a fade to black so that we don't have to just... there's a lot of that in this game, which I appreciate, that they don't have us go through the plot every time, because there have been several characters.
You don't want to talk to Futaba next to your bed, and you can just talk to her over and over again about all of the missing beats and stuff.
Yeah, this game's a third of the length. You don't have time for that.
Exactly.
That's true. I don't know if you guys. I love this kind of scene because last episode we kind of saw Zenkichi awaken to his allegiance to the Phantom Thieves a little bit. And right now, when he's told about the situation with Akane, you see him kind of reawaken to his responsibilities as a father as well, and kind of waking up from, like being so almost zombie-like, being a part of the institution that he is a part of and the systems that he's a part of and stuff like that. And I love that bond points go up here just because, he's part of the team now a little bit. And I think you guys have talked about bond points like mechanically, which I like because, you don't want to just you don't have the time, right, Tom, to just do confidants all over again.
Right.
But I love that story-wise, right, the assumption is that, you've maxed out all of your confidants in Royal, so it's not like you can max them out again. That now the only kind of relationship to build here is the team. And so I like that represents collectively as the team growing together, and with Zenkichi kind of deciding I'm coming in and I'm coming to save today. It gets added a little bit there. Is just a little signifier of he's part of y'all now, and I just loved that little moment.
This is also an interesting thing within the context of the first game as well, because apart from Morgana going AWOL with Haru, the group never really splits up ever, right? It's cool to have a moment where Futaba is on her own, and then have her and Zenkichi being we're gonna just do this ourselves is very. It's we haven't really had I guess there's also a little bit in Royal with the new character there, but there's not a lot of that, right? And especially not in this context where most of the group is in trouble, right? Is very, very different.
I think it's a card that if you played it too much wouldn't have the impact it does.
Yes.
So yeah,
Totally.
I agree. I like when it's used, and I think here it's really great, especially as you said, after he knows everything, Zenkichi's we gotta go in, we gotta go deal with this. And so the two of them team up to go into the jail and help everyone out, and of course help Akane out.
Despite the fact that Futaba points out that Zenkichi has no powers and he could very easily die.
Yes, yeah, which is, I mean, we'll get there.
But he doubles down on it too. Even though he's told that straight up, and he kind of understood that already. He doubles down on that because again he reawakens to his responsibilities as a father, which is I love it. I love him.
Yeah. He really, as you said, and obviously it plays into what's to come. But his early awakening last week of how he feels about the group really builds up as we go through. But anyway. They hop in. We get a little bit more of the gang in their prison cell. Akane calling them fakes, so we get a sense of her not. Obviously, we know Akane has this fandom for the Phantom Thieves.
Yeah.
But calling
as seen by her awesome outfit.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a really cool outfit. Where I was like, damn, that's cool as. I want you to be a part of the Phantom Thieves with that outfit. It's so dope.
She's got this top hat and this mask that looks like Joker's, and her outfit is basically Phantom Thief cosplay, or it is
totally, casual cosplay almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much inspired, very clearly inspired by the Phantom Thieves, right? Yeah. And we get this is spread, I think, in this conversation and a little later too. One of the kind of distorted desires of hers that is pushing her as a monarch is she wants to be able to change bad people's hearts, which is a twisted version of what the Phantom Thieves, right, are doing as well. So I like how much they've made her sort of character, her monarch character, echo a dark version of the Phantom Thieves.
Right. And I wrote down in my notes of it reminded me of like, oh, it's a little Inception-y, right? Where it's like she like where you think of the wife character in Inception. She's so far gone in her perception of the Phantom Thieves that like when she's faced with the real thing, she's like, no, that's the fake, you know. And
right.
I really appreciate that because I think that framework of it of like being like a super fan of something and like, you know, we're all fans of things, right? But there is a level of unhealthiness that it can get to for certain people, right? And I again, when they introduced her character, and you know, you all talked about it when you go into her room, you're like, oh my god, this is super cute. You get to see her be a fan, and I love that they kind of went here with it because I did not expect it whatsoever.
Yeah, the degree of Phantom can turn distorted and can become a problem, absolutely. And it's not, as Tom said last time, lost on us that we are 60-something episodes into a fan podcast of the Phantom Thieves as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get in. Let's get back to the important part of it all, because we get back to Zenkichi and Futaba. They start in the jail. Zenkichi scrambles awfully off the roof. He's just a mess of a human because he's still human. He's not a Phantom Thief. He's just the guy in the suit.
Yeah. And
Futaba is still playing the Oracle role of being in the background. And so it's up to Zenkichi to stealth his way through.
Woo! Dorno got his stealth section.
I can't believe when it happened. Like, it is the cliche, but my mouth went like wide, like, oh my god, it's actually happening now. The thing I have wanted this whole
can't
time.
believe 2 episodes in a row, I believe, you have somehow retroactively willed this section of the game into existence.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny to me. Also, I just want to shout out, like, when, like, he's, like, struggling on the roof and falls down, but then, like, gets back up, and he's, like, starting to walk in, and the jail music starts, is, like, one of the most hype moments in this game. It's so great,
and that jail music rules.
It's great.
We're gonna talk about the jail music once, or actually, we can talk about it in a moment. But Dorna, what did you think about the stealth in Persona 5 Strikers?
It sure is stealth, where you have to slowly walk around.
I love that. Like, I totally forgot that's how it worked because watching it, I was like, oh my, he's just got to run around like a dude because he's not like a cool like Phantom Thief. So when you hit circle to go like hide somewhere, it's not the quick snappy thing like Joker. He's just got to run.
It's really clever.
This is maybe the funniest section in the whole game to me.
Yes,
because it is so intentionally ridiculous. Where when you press circle, like you said, it is just how slow he saunters over to that hiding spot is comical, very intentionally. I don't get the sense that this was done like, you know, accidentally, right? Like the insanity of this is so played up in a great way.
No, this is also mechanic. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was gonna say it's mechanics for comedic effect. Like, it is slapstick comedy through and through.
Oh yeah.
And I appreciate that they take the time to do that because they're ostensibly like, I am sure this is a risk-reward thing that developers often have to think of, but like when you make a mechanic that isn't purely for fun or purely to get you to get the next thing to help you want to keep going, this is a mechanic that isn't necessarily fun to use because he is slow, he is plotting. You're like, he has to get caught. This is just embarrassingly bad, but it's funnier because of that. Like, it works because of how bad he is at it.
I don't know about you, but I also tried to do the Phantom Vision to like see if they had cones of vision, and you just can't do that.
Really? Oh, okay. That makes sense. Well, that makes sense because that's something specifically given to Joker by Igor, right? Really quick, I love, again, because Zenkichi is just adult Joker, when he's first walking in that same cutscene, which is super hype, he pushes like his glasses up like Joker, just solidifying that he's adult Joker. Also, the music is so good. I don't listen to a lot of the Strikers soundtrack like over and over again. Like, I've got a playlist of like a bunch of Persona video game music. There are specific tracks that I will listen to when they pop up in the playlist, and this every time I'm like, yeah, we're about to get hype. We're about to like, I don't go running, but when this comes on, I'm like, I want to like work out or something. It's so good. The way that they kind of mix more traditional Japanese instruments, which gives this kind of larger than life feeling, which is what Akane feels about the Phantom Thieves, and to have it eventually, because you don't hear it at first, but then the way that it becomes a distorted version of life will change. It's just it's pure genius of like what they're doing thematically in the music to tie into the story. It's so cool because you could have just had a hype track, but the way that it ties into Akane as a person is just chef's kiss. It's so good.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on the stealth section, it works as well as it does because it is very short and easy.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It is super brief. It's not hard to avoid the guys. If you get caught, you get sent back to the beginning of the section, but that's really not very far, right? Like, they do this joke and then they don't belabor it and they don't make it, because like a bad stealth section can like ruin a game, right? It can really ruin a game. And so the fact that they just use this to make a point and make a joke and make you realize how weak Zenkichi is compared to the gang, and then they're just like, okay, we're not gonna hit you over the head with this, there's only one section, let's get to the good stuff now, I think is very heads up from them.
Yeah, there's a world where you, like, I could see a team trying to do a jail that is all this. Like, it wouldn't be great, but you could see that as, like, an idea of, like, what if we made you do a jail just as a normal person?
Yeah.
And then you immediately realize it's not fun.
Yeah.
But it's okay for 5 minutes to do it as a joke. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So you get through the stealth section. Like you said, it's not that difficult. I think I got caught once just because I didn't turn the camera and realize there was, like, another persona in the background. It's fine. But you get through, and he very quickly, thankfully, gets to Akane. We get to, the kids being trapped, and Akane and Zenkichi and kind of everyone have this very, very confrontational, very important conversation, where it's Zenkichi talking to, Akane's shadow version, but still, very meaningfully trying to talk through and make some sense to her, but she's extremely mad, gets into the feelings about her mom's death and all of that stuff, and gives us the big reveal that it's Owada who was the one who killed her mom, but that no one has done anything about that, including Zenkichi, is what she believes. And so that sort of ill will is really brought to the surface. I do appreciate, and Tom, I think we had mentioned earlier in the show, like, very clearly it was a big deal whoever killed the mom, but I think kudos to you for not sort of implying it could be someone we met, because I didn't even think about that. Weirdly, I just didn't cross my mind.
Yeah, and this is the Shido tie-in, right? This is the same. This is what they're trying to do. It's just the impact is blunted when it comes so much later in the game. Compared to Shido being like the whole crux of why Joker was even left to go to this place, right? Like, it is not as impactful finding out now, but at the same time, it is. I think it's I appreciate greatly that they are giving a personal connection and a face to this, like a very personal touch to this villain.
Yeah. It feels a little shallow on the villain side, but it still hits on the more personal side of these characters that we've grown to love, even in the short time that we've known Akane. Right? I love Shadow Akane kind of throwing all of this stuff in Zenkichi's in his face and all of his failings for her as a father, because she's not wrong, and I like that she hasn't been given like the full truth on like the length that he went to, right? But there are a lot of things that he failed at doing, and holding that information from her, I would say is like one of them. And I like that, this moment that we're about to get into, right? Usually when we have these kind of moments, you hear the piano in the background, it's about to pop off, and you're like, oh, this is about to get emotional, and someone's about to waken up to something maybe in a second here. I love that in Persona 5, right? Usually when this kind of moment happens, when one of the teens is talking to a shadow, they're being kind of told a distorted lie to keep them down and to make them feel lesser than the shadow that they're talking to. And I love that it's the inverse for Zenkichi, where it's his daughter like telling him the truth, and not to make him feel like lesser, but to make him understand why she has felt so small in this whole situation in the aftermath of the mom's death, right? I just love that he needs to be told the harsh truth and what that truth does to people and the length that it goes to have this next moment that we're about to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into this full conversation as we do, because there's a lot to kind of mesh around. So forgive me if I jump around. But essentially we get sort of the crux of it. She's really throwing everything at him. He, kind of is really brutally sideswiped by this. And, it's Joker and Makoto who really push him to, like, just tell her everything. And I think to an extent, you see, I totally get where you're coming from, Barrett, but I also see why, like, a dad wouldn't tell a kid all this. And so I think that's why all of this works, is because, like, you can see why he wouldn't initially have revealed all of this to his child, because he thinks he's protecting her.
Yeah.
And so he gets into it and then explains the full situation, which was that he was taken off the case. The secretary, like, left the note, and they kind of left it at that. And to them, the case was closed. But the secretary who committed suicide and said they had done this and everything, he tried to keep looking into it. After she told him what happened, I believe he says, like, he opened his own investigation, but they kept wiping his evidence. Like, every time he tried to make progress, it seemed to disappear. And so he promised his wife that he'd protect her no matter what. And so he thought protecting her meant not telling her what happened.
And he also gets threatened at one point as well. Like, when the evidence keeps getting wiped and stuff, eventually, like, something came in the mail where they're like, if you care for Akane, you're going to stop whatever you're doing. And so that's another aspect.
I've written down that they just straight up say, like, you have to stop the investigation or she would die.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like he felt he had to protect her no matter what. And even though it was clear the corruption that was going on, we get a much deeper sense for why we've seen these scenes of him feeling so strongly that there is corruption and just abuse of power throughout his organization that he doesn't approve of. There's things he feels that are out of his hands that he can't do, and now we have an understanding of why. And I think that threat looming over him is really a big part of it. And then just to mention, and obviously I want to throw it to both of you, but, like, I think the thing that surprised me the most was this moment that pops up right after when Akane is like, but what about the family of the secretary?
Yeah.
I thought this was such an interesting and, like, very great twist that I was really impressed by in terms of her reasoning, because I think, like, speaking to what you were saying, Barrett, it brings this idea of him kind of reckoning with the idea of his mistakes, and that they go beyond his personal grief and obviously the terrible things that he's dealing with, but it's like a single action can affect so many people.
Yeah. And
so to have this secretary who now is framed, the family has to deal with this idea that the secretary did this and that they were framed and don't know that they were framed. And to have this weighing over them, how must that family feel about having lost that person? And then, to have gone through all this when they didn't have to, because Owada was allowed to keep going and to dominate the way he did. I really liked this bit. Tom, I don't know if you have anything you want to...
I mean, it's also sort of, I don't think this is the specific intent of it, but it is partially surprising because it also plays off of you as a player's expectations of, like, what's going on in what you expect from a game. Like, it's so easy in a video game like this to just be like, the secretary, a faceless NPC we will never bring up again, right? Yep. And, like, just not think about that character who doesn't have a name and you've only been has mentioned twice and, like, is this scapegoat, and then you move on. And, like, so for them to be like, actually, what about this other human? This person was a human, and you bring them into the story in a way that is really not traditionally done in video game stories like this, where you're actually caring about this person that you didn't really see or know, is important because it is a moment for Zenkichi to be like, it's not about you, right? And it also it works because it's playing off that for you as a player too. Mm-hmm. And it, like you said, Jonathan, it takes the issue from just, like, Zenkichi's own baggage, for to put it kind of coldly, I guess. And it says this is a bigger thing, right? And that's when Akane sort of starts going into this other part of her character and the points she's making, which is it's about not ignoring bad things that people have done, and not ignoring evil that people have done generally, wider, right, than just like, you know, you protecting your family, even though that's what he thought was right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, Barrett, to your point, this really ties into, and obviously we're about to just get to it, so I'll start talking about it a little bit more plainly, but as we get into a proper sort of transformation scene that we haven't had before, I think all of this, like you said, is somewhat of an inverse in a really cool way. Because he's like, I was doing what a man has to do to protect his family, and then the voice comes out of the nowhere and is like, no, you didn't have to do that. That's not what justice is.
This voice is really confrontational in a way that none of the other awakenings have been.
Exactly.
Right. And it's because, like, the other awakenings, right, they have never been a part of the system. They're bystanders who awaken to, like, what that has, the lengths of what that does to other people, of people kind of abusing power and abusing other people and stuff like that, where Zenkichi is like an active cog in that. And so it's a little bit more of a struggle of what his place in that and the lengths of, you know, his involvement goes to. And I absolutely adore it, because then we get, I'm going to say it, the most hype awakening, I would say even more hype than Makoto, in the Persona 5 universe, because it is just chef's kiss. It makes so much sense. You don't expect it, and when it pops up, you're like, oh my, yeah, of course that's, you know, his persona. And it's so good.
And this awakening too, and this whole kind of journey Zenkichi goes on in this moment is like, it's notable to me that it feels almost more similar initially to them changing the heart of a palace ruler, where it's somebody who did bad things that they a lot of the times thought they were right. Not necessarily the palace rulers, but like the palace rulers have excuses, and then the monarchs oftentimes have, like, they thought they were doing the right thing, like Hyodo, right? Marka Hyodo is like, thinks she's doing a good thing, but she's doing it for bad reasons or whatever, or is doing bad things for potentially good reasons. This feels like that in a weird way, where he's like trying to convince himself that what he did was for the best and for Akane and all this stuff. And then even his own internal self is like, nah, right? And kicks him down.
Because this is also it's also the power dynamic as well, because I think, you know, the patron saint of this podcast, Andrew Goldfarb, might have to text me later and correct me. This might be the oldest person that's ever had a Persona awakening, and like slight vague spoilers for the rest of the games, like in any Persona game maybe. So it's like, it's also that weird power dynamic that you don't see, where it's like, you know, the jail ruler who's this kid who's also helping, in a way, this adult awaken to his persona, which is like a very interesting thing to see. And
then when he basically gets to the point of what a monarch would disappear and go and change their heart, he's like, I'm done, and he's down, and it's the Phantom Thieves that, just like with the Ango Natsume, the author guy, say like, no, like, don't give up, get back up, keep fighting, and that's when he stands up and transforms. And like, that's, I think, like, they really push him to go through a thing here and reckon with what he's done in a way that basically none of the other transformations in Persona 5 have.
Well, and it's, I think, to like what both of you were saying, and I think, Barrett, you were saying sort of like, he's been the cog in the machine already, so like he should have this basis of knowing a little bit more than them. Like, it's that great thing of they're kids, and so them messing up, like, this power, I think, that they get, they're new enough in life that, like, they don't understand how everything works, whereas this power, this voice is like, no, you've been through this, you should know by now. Like, you...
Yes.
I haven't played enough of the other games to know, but yeah, I really like the power dynamic of an adult getting a persona power, because yeah, it does have to be like, well, we can make this contract, but like you should know some stuff.
And even like his the conversation with like every awakening and contract sign, right? There's the inner self talking outwardly, and I love the shots here because you see like the actual like, not like a shadow Zenkichi, but his shadows on the floor, and you see the eyeballs like staring back at him, which is like so visually striking. Not really something that we see with any other awakening, which again just adds to the just absolute amount of hype here. Like what his like inner self is saying to him. Do you finally see the truth? Do you know the face of the guilty? They condemned the good to slavery just as you once did. Show your jailers that you wear a different chain. And it is just, it's so perfect. And Dorno, what does he yell out when he finally accepts the truth and signs the contract?
Is this the quiz question?
No, this is the most hype moment of the game.
I don't have the word. I just know what his name is.
No, he yells out the name. Valjean.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's right. Because my girlfriend was watching this part with me, and her first reaction was, "Is this 40-year-old man about to become a Phantom Thief?" was Meredith's first.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. Did you see this coming at all? Like, did you think he was going to get powers? At a certain point, I assume you thought something was coming, but like, did you think he was going to become a party member at any point?
I think last week. I think when he has that moment when he kind of flashes back and is like, "I'm a Phantom," like he doesn't say it, but like when he thinks back to the moment when Ryuji basically says like, "Becoming one of us, Gramps, huh? Like you're becoming a Phantom Thief." To me, that was him being like, "Oh, I am one of them." And I assumed something would happen. I didn't know if he would have a full awakening or like if just there would maybe be something else in the metaverse. Because like, again, he is an adult and I didn't know if they would let that happen weirdly. But I think last week was the first time where I was really like, okay, maybe he becomes more. Because yeah, up until this point, every adult has either been a real world assistant or a villain of some kind, basically. So
yeah.
I didn't expect, like, when they brought him into the metaverse in the beginning, I just thought that was like, that's funny and a quirk. I'm sure this is just for fun. Like, I didn't think about it as like a laying the path to it. But I will say it is something that I do think, with them doing that early on, sows the seeds that he becomes this very well. It doesn't feel out of character for the game. I think it is well placed in there. And then, yes, when he does yell Valjean, immediately, again, my girlfriend's thing was like, does that make sense for what he's saying he's becoming, or should it be another character in Les Mis? But whatever, we'll just let it go.
No. Valjean is perfect, and let me tell you, like, at this point in the game, when I was first playing it, was that last year that came out in the West, I think? It was like early 2021.
Was it
yeah, because Persona 5 Royal was 2020, and then this came a year later in the West.
Yes,
At this point, I was like, I really like this. I really enjoy this. I don't love it like I love Persona 5, but I just like the excuse of hanging out with these characters. And I did not expect for this game at this point to have a moment where I literally got up from my chair and yelled, like, "Let's go," at like 10 o'clock at night, because, I'm a theater nerd, not the biggest music theater nerd, but I just love that because it's one of those things where you don't see it coming. Like, you know he's going to get a persona in this moment, but when he yells out Valjean and you're like, oh my God, that is the most perfect persona for him to have. And then even like the quick, like, you see the actual prison number from the story of 24601 on the chest of it. You're like, oh my God, it's perfect because of what I have written down here. I waxed poetic taking notes yesterday. The thief who became a gentleman. A man who focused only on his own benefit and recognized the systemic failures that forced him to do unlawful things, despite becoming a contributing member to that system. A man who time and time again breaks free from the chains of oppression to help others. Even if he may fail and stumble a few times, he knows the greater value love has over law. Zenkichi Hasegawa, Jean Valjean. And it is so goddamn perfect. I did not expect Les Mis to be the thing that's referenced here in this game to get me super hyped, but it's fantastic and I love it, and this awakening is 10 out of 10 perfect. No notes.
It's great. I will say I don't know Les Mis well because that was my senior year musical in high school, and that was the year I decided not to audition for anything and just joined the lighting team and just kind of messed around with them in the background and never listened to the show. So I don't know Lib as well. I was just like, oh yeah, that's the guy in the movie. I know him a little bit.
Yeah. That's Hugh Jackman.
Exactly. But no, it is great. He gets this really cool outfit. Has like an incredibly like. Is the sort of like point is on the hat, right?
No, yeah. It is. Okay.
I think
he has this big sort of French Revolutionary hat with like a very pointed tip, and then the back of it is actually riveted to his collar, which is huge, which is insane. It's just a wild outfit.
And they even call out like later on, right, where they're like, that outfit, he's like, it belongs in a museum. So, that's great.
The only thing I don't like about the outfit is from the back, because the neck goes up all the way, he looks a little goofy, like he loses some imposingness.
And that's where you're kind of seeing him for most of the time too, like when you get into gameplay.
From the front, looks very cool. Tom, what were you going to say before we move on?
I was going to say the funny thing about this character also is that if you watch the intro cinematic before the main menu, it spoils it.
Oh, really?
Wait, really?
He is in his persona transformation in the intro cinematic so you know that there is going to be, if you like pay close attention to that, you know there's going to be a person and like an extra party member, and if you are like paying attention, probably it's Senkichi. So like my general rule is never watch the intro cinematic of a JRPG because it is almost always filled with spoilers.
Because it's usually it's like an anime intro where like the intro is about the arc that you're watching, and then you get moments in the intro that are like every episode you haven't gotten to that moment, but they kind of tease it a little too much, and you're like, oh, I guess that's something we're building up to. That's cool.
Like if you watched the intro cinematic of the original Persona before playing that game, like
you knew
every character is in it, right? Like it's just I'm a little bummed that they did that they put that in the beginning, but I'm glad that you didn't notice.
I really didn't. That is a very funny trope. You're totally right. It is a thing of like, who are these 6 characters I've never met before? I guess they'll be important now. But yeah, it's I didn't notice that. I'm glad I didn't. I hope people out there didn't notice it either. I will say if people did, they've been wonderful in the comments about not alluding to it. So everyone.
Yeah, I didn't notice that either. Granted, I have not watched that intro in a long bit, but yeah, I could not even picture Zenkichi being in that intro.
That's very fair. So anyway, we get this transformation. I know we've talked about it a lot, but we do have a lot more to get to. But so we get this transformation. We get our first fight with him. Against a group of personas, not against Akane or anything. This is still early on because we're not technically in the jail yet.
To quickly go through his combat mechanics, basically he has this thing where he has like Fury that will drain his health and make him do more damage, but then when he has Fury off, his abilities actually heal him, but the heal is like comically negligible. It's such a small heal, and then his element is Almighty, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I didn't think the heal was working. I thought I misread the text because I didn't notice it going up. I got him down to 20 health, and I was like, he's not healing. What is happening? What when I turned it off? So I didn't use him much in this jail. But
the trick is to just load up on tons and tons of healing items and get the bond skill that makes your healing items do more healing, and then you can just use Fury full time and then occasionally throw a healing item on him, and it's the kind of more effective way to use him.
He's super powerful, so like it seems worth it, and he can do a huge swipe, so he can get a lot at once. So he seemed useful. It was just one of those things where my brain was like, I don't want to have to deal with a heavy mechanic right now, so I'm just gonna like put him to the sideline until the boss and everything. But anyway, we get this big fight. We talk to Akane one time after that, I believe. Before we
basically he tries to convince her again, and then she says, no, I want to use my power to change people's hearts, and leaves.
So the group is then freed. We get the wonderful time-honored tradition of choosing a code name for him, Wolf,
which he does himself and actually has some cool symbolic meaning.
And it ties into him talking about the dogs that he views his coworkers as earlier in the game. So yeah, I appreciated that whole conversation. He does really go on about it for a long time, but I'm like, you have your moment, dude. I'm not gonna mind. But we get through all of that. We do get another Velvet Room visit. I don't even think I wrote that down in my notes.
It's so I think that's it's during
just,
nap time.
Yeah,
we have a nap time, and then because we're like we got to go save Akane. It's like, but first we gotta take a nap, which makes sense because he just awoke into his persona. But it was really funny here, where it's just like we have this very important thing to do. It's like any open world RPG where you have like a very time specific quest where it's like Fallout 4. You gotta go save your son, but first let's go explore some caves and stuff and go build a settlement and like do all of this stuff. Where it's like we gotta go save Akane, but first we gotta take a nap. We gotta take a nap because we're all sleepy people.
Oh, yeah, if this were an open world game, it would be like, we gotta go save Akane, but first I need to collect 50 different types of flowers.
The only useful thing in the Velvet Room here is that you get the ability to use your persona points to buff specific stats.
Right.
And so now you can just be like, this person I want a ton of magic on, and just like up that stat, which is kind of neat. It's just, again, it's a little bit more like, they're just making the system a little bit flexible and still accessible, a little more flexible, which I appreciate within the context of this game.
Yeah.
And then I love also that you wake up from your nap and Zenkichi's just like, okay, I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
I know. It's like in that moment, I was like, remember when Futaba like slept for 3 weeks after like her jail and awakening to her persona? Granted, I get that like she's a little more like frail, especially at the time and stuff. But like everybody else like needed a little bit of time, like a day to like sleep overnight. Whereas Zenkichi's like, had an hour-long nap, let's go. It's like, okay, all right.
Doing this whole jail in a single day.
I mean, maybe he's not as frail as Futaba sort of like was allegedly at that time, but he's old. He's an old man.
He's so old.
And if I know anything about being old, you need to sleep a lot.
Yeah, he's at least 25. He's ancient.
Yeah. Do we know how old Zenkichi is? Because we've been referring to him as the old man. I'm like, is he like a year older than me?
I still think he's like mid to late 30s is the vibe I get.
He is 40 years old.
40, okay.
Okay, phew.
That
all
tracks.
right, I feel a little better. Because I was like, is he going to turn out to be 32?
I was going to say, like, he's not fully gray, but it does seem like his hair is, like, slowly, like, kind of fading from, like a straight-up black to a little graying there, so... Yeah. I got a little bit older vibes, but that would have been depressing if that was the case and he was, like, 28.
It does make it a little weirder that he's, like, becoming best friends with 16-year-olds, but that's okay.
Yep, yeah. It's a bit odd. We'll get to that hopefully maybe at the end of the game. Hopefully it's cleared up. They're like, oh, surprise, we actually all turned 18, so there's nothing weird about this man following us around. Anyway, now we actually get to the jail. We've been in the jail. Yeah. We've done a wonderful stealth section in the jail. We've had a battle in the jail, but now we actually start the jail itself.
And the jail, like Okinawa before it, is shorter and significantly more straightforward, right? Yeah. It's basically the gimmick of it is that it's this labyrinth, right, with these where the map that you're looking at is not actually the map you walk through because there's all these teleporting hallways and you got to do this stuff with the fox statues. But functionally, it's not much of a labyrinth because pretty much there's 2 loops. Right? Yeah. There's sort of 2 circular loops that each have like one offshoot of them, and that's pretty much it. Which means that it's not easy to get lost in it. It's just you sort of got to be paying attention in a fun way to know where you are and where you're going and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I will say I opened just because as soon as I went through one portal, I was like, oh, this might get dangerous. So I opened up the IGN guide to take a look at it. Nice. And I was like, I might need it. And there was a literal map with like, here's the 1-to-1 and like,
the correct, like kind of like actual pathway.
But I never looked at it once. Like, you're right. I didn't get lost in this. I will say, like, I expected it to be much more exhausting than it was, which I am grateful for.
It's because they do a smart thing where they make it feel jumbled, but like I said, there's those 2 loops, and both of the loops end back at the fox couple statue that you're trying to get through to get to the cage or whatever. Yeah. So as long as you just walk forward in a direction, you will always end up back at where you started. And so like it's really easy to, if you don't know where you are, to just sort of reset yourself and get back to where you need to be.
And also but if you go backwards, it's not like, because some games will do this, you go backwards and going backward through that portal will end you up somewhere different from where you went into that portal, basically. It doesn't do that. Yeah, so even if you go backwards, you're still going kind of in a straight line, which is very helpful.
They could have easily made this more frustrating, but I'm glad that they didn't, which fits with the size of the jail as well. That's why this one, like mechanically, this one in Okinawa are my favorite because they're not nearly as long, and I felt, especially with the first few jails, it was a little grating to get through them because they felt longer than they needed to be. Like we went through Alice in Wonderland, and then there's like a section where we're like in the sewers, and it's like why are we here? And then with all of them up until this point, there's the whole like. I like it thematically with the where you have to like leave the jail to go find the like trauma memory thing to open up the gate, but then like it also just like extends things in a way that mechanically I didn't find really interesting, and I kind of like was kind of like tuning out at certain points, and always found the jail keeps to be really frustrating fights. So I was glad with at least with this one that there was kind of none of that. I know that the Okinawa one, the boss fight is the jail keep, but I like that was kind of like the one boss, right? So
and I will say there's two shrines you got to go to, right? The Father Shrine and the Mother Shrine, and each of those have like a boss encounter in them, or like a stronger shadow encounter, and those aren't the fights in this jail are not pushover fights, right? Like those are definitely they can hit you pretty hard. I do appreciate there's one section in it where they say that there's this like character who keeps getting annoyed by a cat, and then that character is weak to wind, so if you use Morgana, you can actually get a jump on him.
That's a really good call. I didn't even think about that, but as you're going through, you listen to a few shadows talking to each other to get clues about where to go and all that stuff, and there's a cat meowing in the background that they're looking for and afraid of. That is, I didn't even think of that. But no, you're right. As you go through, I think I was worried this was going to kind of be what Okumura. Unless I'm blanking.
Oh, yes.
I was worried the
space maze.
I was worried it might end up being something like that, but it's not. It's a much more convenient one. And as you said, you're going to get to these other statues. You eavesdrop on other shadows to kind of figure out where you need to go to get to them, and all that sort of stuff. 2 boss fights at each of those points. Like you said, not super easy necessarily in this one. I think they are harder than the last few jails have been. I almost had a TPK, I think on, it might have been the cat. I had wind, but I think it had a few attacks that just kind of prevented me from getting back into an attacking cycle. But other than that,
I remember watching that one, and just like, again, the walkthrough I was watching just put me in my place of just how good people, just how dumb I was playing this game, where like how easily they were kind of breaking like the shields to like be able to do more damage. I was like, man, how were people? I felt like breaking the shields was always like such a tough thing to do, and it was just, man, I'm real bad at this game.
Well, it's funny because when you get to a big boss encounter like that in Strikers 2, because you can just leave and refill your mana at any time, there's sort of a point where like if you're just frustrated with a boss, you can just be like, well, you're weak to wind, okay, I'm just gonna use all of Morgana's SP and all of Joker's SP and just get their shields down using weak attacks they're weak to, because then I can just leave and refill it.
My like when I'm in doubt and I know I'm not using the systems well, I just burn all the SP to deal all the magic, and then I just use all of my team's guns, because guns really drain super quick.
I think like I don't think I was utilizing technicals as well in this battle system, just because there's so much going on, and like even in just like the turn-based stuff, like technicals is something like, at least for me, like I have to like think about like, okay, like do I want them to go to sleep so I can like do like Haru's attack on them, and like what's going to be most effective, where it's like that level of like strategizing in like a very like fast pace, like, and I know things like either like pause or slow down when you're like picking actual like SP like magic moves to use, but it was still just like a lot to take in throughout a lot of these fights, which again,
that is the drawback. I have praised this game a lot for being a genuine sequel and talking about issues with characters and arcs characters have gone on and their history in a way that you wouldn't expect from a spin-off game, right? But the drawback of making a sort of mechanically spin-off game a direct sequel is that if you're just not into this combat compared to turn-based, like you're left a little bit of a lurch, right? And that is unfortunate. I really enjoyed this combat, but I do really sympathize with someone who doesn't but still loves Persona characters.
And I say like if they want to do this kind of thing again, teaming up with Koei Tecmo, right, to do something like this, like I'm all for that. I personally hope that they don't do the complete inverse of what Yakuza did, right, where like they went from combat to turn-based for the main games. Like I hope that whenever we get Persona 6 in like 10 years, like we're sticking to the stuff that we know from Atlas, but like I don't want them to shy away from they always get weird with their spin-offs, so like I would love to see it again and me have another shot at it and maybe be better and to think about it.
Yeah, I totally see where you're both coming from, and I do think it is the thing that I've talked to some people who are like, yeah, I'm not as into this one because and I do think, like, to your point, Barrett, of not feeling like you were using it well, is because it throws so much of it at you at once, whereas in Persona 5 and Royal, you are slowly getting bit by bit across hours, and teammates are coming in one by one.
Exactly.
Here you have all the teammates, all the powers, and everything pretty quickly within the first jail or so. So yeah, it can be a lot, but anyway, you go through those two fights. You're kind of trying to activate the Fox couple statue that's back at the beginning. You do
Which, if we're going to talk about bars you can sneak through,
sure,
that statue is not blocking that path literally at all.
It is if you can only move like a video game character. Otherwise, if you are just a human being who could move over things, you could easily circumvent that thing.
Just comical. I love it.
I'm
going to choose to believe that they needed to move them to activate the portal behind them. Right. Otherwise, I quit.
And I think it's somewhere in here where they're figuring out the shrine and these things where Ryuji says to Zenkichi, because he put something together where he's like, oh man, you should be on like a cop show or something, and he responds, I'm already a cop in real life, genius. And it's just a great interaction between something I would expect between Zenkichi and Ryuji.
Yeah. It's really cute, and there's a lot of fun stuff with them. The incidental dialogue in here, there's a lot of fun stuff. And Tom, have I ruined your question yet?
No, Barrett did.
Oh, really?
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's okay. Keep going.
Oh my god. Wait, was it this thing?
No, it happened a while ago.
Okay, we need to talk about it when we get there.
I was going to ask what was written on Valjean's chest.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
It's okay. Yeah. It's okay.
Well, anyway.
I got another one. I got to back up that we're already past the safe point for.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Cool.
Anyway, we get past the statue point as well, and we meet up with Akane again, and have a bit of a fight with her, talking largely about not ignoring evil. Obviously, that's kind of the whole spiel of things of her feeling like Zenkichi ignored the evil in the real world with the case of her mom and everything. Right. The group trying to get through to her, and then we get to an interesting point. I don't know if anyone has other dialogue from the scene, but I mostly just want to get to her decision to fight them with themselves.
Yeah.
I think I took a screenshot of it, and I hope others did too, or at least we're like really enjoying the scene when you get the group of the Shadow Phantom Thieves. Kind of coming at you.
And they've all got like the red like hair and stuff like that, and I think Morgana's got like more of like a red scarf. The reveal of the Phantom Thief cognitions it's super cool. It's such a really cool reveal. I will say in execution, it's a little weird. It's a little awkward once we get into that fight. I think of just like pace wise, but still that moment is just like that team coming out and you're like, oh god, we got to fight ourselves.
Yeah.
My thing is, they revealed it as like the team, and you're like, okay, and then you get in it and it's like, it's just a one-on-one fight. Like in my head when they revealed it in that scene, I'm like, okay, like whichever team member I have now, I'm gonna have to fight those same team members or something like that. Right. And then it's just like Joker fighting Joker, and then even like they have like the kind of like in-fight dialogue, which I just want to say, I forget if you guys brought this up, drove me insane throughout this game, because so much of like the combat audio and stuff like that would overtake like some of the audio being spoken from people during fights, and it drove me insane. And I don't know why they did it this way, and it's like, we gotta move fast. It's a 40-hour game, you know, like there's a lot of exposition and a lot of little moments that we want to dump, but we don't have the time, so let's just do it while something else is happening. But we needed to be better with the audio balancing and cues and stuff like that.
This is something we have not talked about, but definitely, like, I don't think I've heard a single word during any fight on either of the playthroughs I have done of this game.
Like, you want to, like, look, because you can't hear it, you want to look over and read, but then you're fighting, like, 50 people at once, and you're just like, you can't. It's so frustrating.
It's completely untenable. It is a wild choice that they've put, like, full anime TV episode lengths of voiced dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
Just, like, in the background where you can't hear it.
With this fight at the very beginning, Morgana's like, we gotta separate, and it'll be easier to fight one-on-one. And so in my head, I was like, when first fighting Joker v. Joker, I was like, okay, so are we gonna, like, go through every member? And then, like, the Joker v. Joker fight took really long. I was like, I hope I don't have to go through every member. That would really suck. But like, I wish they had done that in Execution, and just that, like, each member was just shorter to fight. Right?
That would be cool.
I would have loved that build up, or like maybe not every single thing, because you know, you have 8 teammates, but like whoever was part of your party, like you start with, you know, Morgana, and then go to Zenkichi, and then go to Makoto, and then you like always end with the Joker fight. Like, I thought that would have been really cool. So it was like, it's such a cool concept, and I think execution wise, it was a little weird. I think they still got it across in an ultimately cool way. And I also wrote down in my notes, I forgot how much the rock and roll rendition of Last Surprise absolutely shreds especially during this fight. It's so cool.
It works really well and does elevate I think for me, the execution is what I wished, kind of what you were talking about. I think it would almost work better in a turn-based game, because you could have had, you know, a party of people, and it would have felt like you were using powers against each other. Well, here, I think even if they did like a 4v4 of real-time battle, it wouldn't have quite felt the same. But I wish there was a thing where it was like, you fight as someone for a little while, and as soon as you hit like a certain part of their health bar, it cuts over to another person, and the battle's midway through, and you come in and fight with them.
Right. And maybe that was just something, maybe that's something they toyed with, like I think you guys were talking about last week, of like all of the cities that they talk about, and then we don't go to any of those cities or jails or whatever. Like, I wonder if that was like an early concept of like, we want to have this moment where the Phantom Thieves fight each other, and then once they got to actually like figuring that out, they tried stuff, and this was like ultimately the thing that they went with. But even if they went with that, I would have appreciated it a little bit. That would have gone a long way of like being able to see the characters in the background, like have them kind of be like the border of the fight or whatever, just to kind of feel like it's all happening together in a way, you know?
Yeah. And this fight is not easy, right? No. Like, I don't know what your experience with it was, Jonathan, but like, I was able to beat it on the first try this time because I knew what to expect a little bit, but like I don't believe I did on my first time. And one of the reasons for that is you have to be super aggressive with your healing.
Yes.
Because no one is healing you automatically in the background without you noticing.
Right.
And you only have one character, so if you die, the fight just ends, right? Yep. It's like you don't have a lot of second chances or anything in this fight.
I beat it on my first try, but only by using almost all of my health items. Because, it was a very exhaustive fight. I think it was a war of attrition, basically. And it was just slowly whittling down. I think it's the first fight since really the beginning. And there have been some tough fights, but I think nothing that felt sort of like just barely making progress, like barely putting a dent in things, and since the first like Alice fight and the first like jail keeper fight, when I was first getting used to the lock keeper guys. I'm blanking on the name. But since then I haven't felt a fight be that just such a whittling down, like an exercise in whittling rather than a very involved fight. He's a really aggressive boss battle, and I think it's an interesting fight. And the mechanics of it are really cool, but it could have been fine if it ended 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah, and part of that is because they don't have a weakness, right? It's so and they dodge your attacks, all of which are really cool because it's very thematic in terms of that's you fighting and it feels like you're fighting Joker.
Yeah,
but it is a hard fight. And shout out actually to, I just looked it up, the Blue Golden Hawk was the one who mentioned a few episodes back about the Avenger bond skill that lets you auto evade and auto counterattack, and that ability. I maxed it, and it came in such handy with this fight, because then you would auto-evade, and that would let you do a one more, and the one more would stun Joker, and that would let me get in more hits. And so ability was clutch in this fight.
Let me write that down, so whenever I replay this, I know to use that. Because, that was a similar thing. I remember this boss fight for how cool it was thematically and presentation-wise, and then how frustrating it was fighting 1v1. So, yeah, that's a
you
cool
do get the
tip.
cool like button mashy clash in the middle though.
That is dope as hell every time. Even though like it happens like 3 times to that fight every single time.
I think that was my hope, was that the fight would turn into more moments like that and less me just kind of like 2 hits running away, 2 hits running away, 2 hits running away.
Right.
But anyway, you eventually hopefully whittle down Joker and get to beat the boss. That is essentially the boss fight. You don't fight Akane properly or directly in a major way.
Good.
Yes, I know. How dare they not let us fight this child?
And also that they don't turn her into a monster, right? Like a bunny person or whatever.
Zenkichi couldn't handle that. So they have this big talk afterwards, after you defeat Joker, kind of talking about him realizing that he's turned away from focusing on the justice that he should have been enacting, and that he wants to be better about that. He was obviously afraid to lose her. He was worried about the consequences of the threats against him and everything, but he acknowledges to her directly that he was wrong. Akane kind of talks about being afraid to lose him as well. And what I really enjoy in this moment, kind of as they're having this heart-to-heart, she vanishes, and Zenkichi loses it. He is like,
Akane! It's so good.
Dude, the fact that at no point in this process did anyone in the group mention to him that that's not actually his daughter is like straight criminal. That's messed up.
He thought that his daughter just died and turned into a Force ghost. Like that was what was happening in his head at that moment, and it's so on point though too, because they're still just dumb teenagers, and they're like, oh shit, yeah, sorry, we forgot to tell you.
Yeah, it's
that
just so
also
funny
means that whole conversation before his awakening, he thought he was talking to his daughter.
Yeah.
Like, it's messed up.
Well, and it's really funny because then they let him have that grief for like a full minute or two. Like, he has a lot of dialogue before anyone comes over and is like, no, don't worry, she's fine.
And he calls him out, right? He's like, you could have mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Like,
it's really, really funny that happens. But man. I think, in a funny way sort of solidifies, like Barrett was saying, like they're still kids, and I think solidifies this relationship between all of them. Like, he's not furious at the end of the day. Like, he's angry, but he gets over it pretty quickly. Because they're able to get back out into the real world.
I also love with this moment where they're like, well, then where's the real Akane? And then suddenly they're like, well, I guess none of us checked if she was just home.
Yep.
These dumb kids, man. I laughed so hard because I forgot that beat. When I was rewatching it yesterday, I genuinely was like, so they have her in the jail, right? Like, even though we're talking to her shadow the entire time, like, she's still in here. And I totally forgot that they're like, oh yeah, we never actually like checked your house. We just we just went, and she's been home the entire time. They didn't need to do any of this, even though like it does, help her in a way. Like she would have definitely been in a different state if they had just checked if she was home. But still, it's just, God, they're so dumb, and I love them.
They do great stuff, and then a lot of dumb stuff. So they get home. Akane is asleep in bed, recovering, and Zenkichi, kind of goes through everything with her. Which
he didn't need to do, because like he did all this with her shadow. Like, she doesn't know anything that happened, but like I respect
being honest with her.
Yeah, like he's actually owning up. Like, even though he already went through that himself, he's still following through on like doing that with his actual daughter and not shadow daughter.
Yeah,
and he kind of promises that like we're gonna go after them, and kind of he tries to be a better man with her at this point. And then we kind of get to the gang back at the hideout. debriefing after the situation, wondering how Akane became a monarch, but we know she was made into one to capture us. Like, we were getting the sense that this was obviously a ploy to deal with us a little bit. We assume it's Kanoe at this point.
Yeah, basically this is just them piecing together what you as the player already know.
Exactly. Right. We do get a call from Sai. And as you said, we don't get her animation.
No.
Here, but.
we still get the 2D art, though,
yes.
which at least we get that. Is this the moment where they... I've been following along to the podcast, but little moments get hazy. Is this kind of the realization they have that, like, monarchs are created? You know, because they have the moment where they're like, well, Akane wasn't, you know, the leader of a jail beforehand, so they artificially made this. Like, is that like the reveal for them? Like, I think we as the player knew.
I think it's not the specific reveal because they do discuss some of that in the Okinawa jail because they know that that guy was like made the test monarch or whatever.
Right. Okay.
But this is definitely them piecing together more that they can just make anybody a monarch, right? And it doesn't. They don't need to be distorted in the way that like the palace rulers were.
And I have written down here that I think they assume Kanoe was doing this for specific reasons, like that there was an intention to turning these people into monarchs, that it wasn't just the like, let's just turn people into monarchs and see how it goes.
Which I really love is that like it's a little bit of the inverse, like we're saying with Persona 5, where it's like those are people who, you know, were willing to be a part of a system of oppression, who, you know, take that into their own hands and abuse others. Whereas, like, you kind of get this moment where you realize of, like, oh, these are the people that we've been fighting that have been set up as, like, the antagonists are people who have been selectively taken advantage of by the systems of power, which I find really interesting and cool. Also, you know, we're talking about the Sai conversation. She asks, do you remember me? Brett, you interrogated us for 70 hours in the last game.
Yeah.
What do you mean, do I remember you? You're my girlfriend's older sister in the game, if you do the canonical girlfriend in that game. Of course I know who the hell you are. I've been going on a road trip with your not even like the dating aspect. I've been going on a road trip with your sister for the last month or whatever. I know who you are, Sai.
Yeah.
Do you remember me? Get over yourself.
It's a real, like, oh, we need to make sure people who have never played Persona 5 have a chance to know who this character is. But again, if you made it this far and haven't played Persona 5, I can't imagine you're liking the game to the extent that, like, we like.
Or you're a weirdo who, you know, someone once told me that they've only played Persona 5, but they skip all the story stuff because they just like the gameplay, so they don't know what the story of Persona 5 is. Maybe you're one of those people who's just playing Strikers because you like the gameplay, but you don't care about anything else, and you're here at this point.
And yet, not anywhere near the most ridiculous thing Sai has said to you, probably.
No, that's fair.
Given that she's like,
100%.
Yeah.
You probably have a spiritual healer telling your fortune.
Someone taught you strategy. Who's the professional shogi player that taught you strategy?
Yeah.
Who is it? Reveal yourself.
So
who is the child who taught you how to shoot guns in an arcade? Tell me their name.
There's an interesting amount of good press for you. Do you by chance have a friend who's a journalist who hangs out at a drag bar? Just a question.
Oh, shit.
She's a very good investigator.
Yeah, no, so, again, I think I'm into this Sai and Zenkichi ship. I think it would work out really well.
I think so too.
Anyway, better than like Akechi weirdly hitting on Sai, I think, at one point or two. It felt like there were some weird vibes with him at some point.
Well, Akechi's got baggage, so.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sai calls in, lets you know, like, basically you're free. The arrest warrant is off of you.
Because it like, straight up says the arrest warrant was voided because it didn't have a judge's seal and all of the evidence was fake.
Yeah,
like,
it was just a very poorly put together. Yeah, everything.
It's
about
like basically the cops were like, I have it right here in my hand, and Sai walked in and was just like, your hand is empty, and like that was what happened.
It makes me think of like Doctor Who's psychic paper, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so yeah, because what's cute about this too is they hear cop cars outside right before she calls, and so there's this like worry that, oh no, we're in trouble, and then she's like, nah, you're fine. And so she calls, everything is going all well. We kind of need to figure out now at this point, since we have the heat off us a little bit, how to take down Konoe. That is sort of the big takeaway from all this after this has happened. We need a keyword for his jail. We're kind of at a loss for things, but we need someone to get his keyword without it being suspicious. Sophia suggests we contact Ichinose, who could get it without seeming odd. And so we just call Ichinose, fill her in on everything, and she's like, yeah, I already have his keyword. I'm good.
Yeah. She's so bubbly and silly.
I know, and I love that comes back, because I felt like she was going to kind of be, like, nothing in the end. Like, when they first introduced her and, like, how she's kind of, like, utilized throughout the game, I was just like, what are we doing? And I'm glad that they brought her back in a way that feels like, oh, like, she was significant, she was important, and she is a fun character to just kind of check in on and stuff. So I thought that it felt like an impressive thing where, like, no one felt wasted throughout this game. So I was glad that they brought her back before we get into the final setup here, which is exciting.
I like Ichinose as a character, and I feel like if this were a game that were more centrally located, she would have a bigger supporting role.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, you mean like if it was in one city or something where you could revisit
and
her?
she was like a shopkeep or something like that. That was like significant. Yeah.
It feels like she would be a confidant person, basically.
100%.
Yeah, which I would have enjoyed. But anyway, she has the keyword, but she does not keep a tidy house, and it sounds like her room. I like that she does say her room is a mess. So I don't know if she's a mess. Roommates or anything, but anyway, I just want to know what her home situation is like. After being this incredible, technical person that created Emma. But anyway, she's like, give me a day and I'll figure out the keyword. I got to go find it. And you hear like stuff collapsing in the background, all these things. So it's all a mess. And so she'll get it for you tomorrow. But in the meantime, we head off to get a little closer to Konoe and go to Osaka.
Yeah, Osaka. And hey, guess what? We're already there.
Yep,
and
we immediately get there on August 24th.
It's a good thing, too.
All that stuff that we just talked about in this entire episode happened in one day.
Yeah. I've heard that Osaka is Japan's kitchen.
Yeah, I heard that too. It's been really funny you guys commenting on this because I've been rewatching Jujutsu Kaisen, and they do kind of similar stuff where in like the first episode, like a teacher is like, oh, I was late because I was grabbing this like delicious dessert from this part of Tokyo. And it's like a little bit of that like, okay, like I feel like you're trying to sell me on something, and maybe if I ever go there, like I'll take you up on it, and I'll try to find that delicious dessert.
It's effective marketing.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, which I just love that they do.
I was trying to think of like American places, like American television or things do that, and I don't think they do unless it's a like cooking or reality show that is about restaurants or
I remember there's the episode of 30 Rock where they go to Cleveland, and like the entire kind of bit is how great Cleveland is, but that's the only example I can
America does it for corporations.
I was gonna say it's mostly it's paid for marketing in the middle of it, and it's mostly like, we sure had enjoyed that delicious sandwich from Subway. Anyway, let's get back to
we have seen cities start to do it, not in media, but like every once in a while, I feel like in the Bay Area, we'll get like a billboard for like, come to Portland. And it's like, all right, cool, maybe.
I will say the closest place that does it now is probably YouTube videos, because there's a lot of like tourism activations that happen. And so I watch a lot of cooking YouTube channels, and they'll be like, they brought us over here to learn about how wineries happen in Italy or whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. But yeah, anyway, we get to Osaka. And
to be clear, we're stopping just when you get control again. Yes. So like we're almost done here.
Yeah.
If you haven't played further than this.
So the jail starts, and we chat with Zenkichi about how Akane's doing. That's a little bit of just like setting up the scene of how things have been going since the jail.
He also said like I think it's either him and like this is it. This is the big one, which
they're setting it up.
Yeah. They really set this up. Ichinose calls and shares the keyword, which is Zephyrman, which is apparently a kids' TV live-action superhero show. I think Futaba says it's like pretty small-time, deep cut.
Yeah. He's a superhero nerd.
He's just a nerd. Yeah,
which is very fitting because he's the anime Tony Stark.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't wait to see what his look is in universe. But then we basically just get our mission start, and you can, I guess, go in at this point. You got control.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny one because you already know who you're going after, right? And you already have his keyword, and this is the first time in the city, so there's we're not going to get into this right now, but like you can explore Osaka, there's stores to go into, there's new requests, but really it's just like you're ready to go, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the beginning of this. The time between the last jail and this jail is nothing.
Again, it's a very fast-moving game. Like I love the bit in Persona 5, right, where it's like 4 times in a row. They're like, this is our last job, and like they're doing that again, where it's like, this is it, this is the last thing, but like you kind of know that like because this isn't a 120-hour game, you're like, okay, yeah, like they're doing it. We're getting in here and stuff, which I'm excited to hear what y'all will have to say in the next coming weeks about how you feel about Kanoe and all of his superhero nerd shit and getting in there. It's gonna be a fun time.
And speaking of, I guess, Tom, do you have a vague place where you can say we want to get to? Because I don't know. I have no idea how the rest of this goes.
So we're going to have to talk about it. We're going to have to mention it at the beginning of the next episode, probably. The plan is to play through the jail, for sure.
Okay.
Specific stopping point, I don't know exactly. But the plan is to finish this jail, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So at least know to go through the jail. Because, I will say... Yeah, I think, definitely don't want to spoil anything for anyone, so I guess hold your tongues, but I don't know. This feels like we're getting into the end game. This feels like we're getting close toward,
To be clear, because I've discussed this with you, Jonathan, already, for people at home, we are probably 2 to 3 more episodes of this show away from being done.
Gotcha.
Like, I don't imagine we have a lot more to go in terms of, like, breaking things up.
Oh, man, no 52 episodes for this
40-hour
game?
I was like, are we going to even make it to double digits? Which we do, I believe, with this episode. But so,
yes.
That is good to know. I think good planning for the future ahead gives us plenty of time. We'll beat it then before God of War Ragnarok comes out, to date this show very clearly. But yeah, I'm excited to get into it. It does, it feels like we're ramping up. I think... Barrett, I'm glad we had you here for this one, because it does feel like a really important, emotional, meaningful jail for the Thieves, for, I think, Zenkichi, and like sort of the new side of things.
Yeah, this was the height of the game for me, not to paint any picture of, like, where the game goes from here, but this is, like, I really enjoyed this game. Don't love it as much as Persona 5 Royal or even some of the other Persona games or even other Persona spin-off games, to be honest. But this moment, this sequence will always like stand out to me of something that I truly adored. So again, thank you for having me on to talk about it and wax poetic and talk about dumb things like Futaba tripping over nothing.
Of course. It's been a very interesting one to go off of. Persona 5 Royal and jump into this, and I'm excited to see where things go from here. But before we wrap up, Tom, what is your pop quiz question for us now that Barrett has ruined it?
Okay, so I've got a simpler one. That Velvet Room trip doesn't do much, but it does reveal one thing, which is that Zenkichi probably would have been a confidant in a game with confidants. So the question is, what is Zenkichi's Arcana?
I didn't write it down, but I remember that happening. Oh, man.
Yeah, same. Wow.
There you go.
Well,
that's the question for next week. You
I
can
know.
leave us.
I don't know the answer. I know the first letter.
You can leave us a comment at youtube.com/Journology. Send us an email at journology@gmail.com. Tweet at us. I'm at Tom R. He's at JM Dornbush. And Barrett is...
at Sad Boy Barrett, where you can find me talking about anime, Persona, Star Wars, all that good stuff. If you want to follow me over there. And hey, just as a reminder, if you don't know me, I'm from Kind of Funny. Later this week, we're doing this little thing where we're launching a new studio. We've been working from home for the last 2.5 years, and we bought a new space at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it took us a while to build it out. And so that is finally coming together this Friday. We're doing a marathon stream starting at 10 a.m. Pacific, and it's going to be a fun time. Come see what the future of Kind of Funny is, which is very exciting. And I can't wait to be together in person with all of my coworker friends again. It's going to be a fun time.
Very excited for you all. Very excited personally that this is happening after I started my new job so that people didn't keep asking me if I was joining. Kind of funny.
I loved that week, though, or those 2 weeks where people were convinced that you were going to be the next member of Kind of Funny, which I wanted to feed into a little bit just to like throw people off the set of like what your next journey was. But I was like, I probably shouldn't stoke the fire, but I almost did from the Kind of Funny account too.
That would have been
I was
really
like,
funny. Well,
maybe not.
very, very excited for you all. Should be a lot of fun to see it all come together. I know it's been a lot of work for everyone, so congratulations in advance to all of you. And by the way, there's a BTS concert at 2 a.m. Friday night. So
I've heard just in the background, our significant others are friends, and they both love BTS, so that's going to be a thing they also do. And now I understand, knowing the time now, because the way Alyssa described how she was going to pace out her night, I was like, what time are you heading over there to watch this BTS concert? And now it makes a lot more sense.
It really does. Anyway, that's aside from the show. But anyway, thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. Very excited to see where we go from here with the rest of Strikers. Barrett, thank you for joining us. Tom, thank you as always for being my wonderful co-host and co-conspirator on this journey. And thank you to everyone out there for listening and watching. We hope you're doing well. We hope you're staying safe. And as always, nice to steal you.